Chapter 34:22. By Shiuli glared at him. But it was useless. Lawyer Yi was shockingly thick-skinned. After the meal, he urged her to change her clothes and made some tea outside. When he was not busy, he was actually a man who knew how to enjoy himself. After drinking 2 cups of tea, the rice worm still hadn't come out. He got up and walked into the bedroom, only to see the one who was supposed to change her clothes lying on the bed and playing with her phone. He went over and took the phone from her hand and looked at her. "Didn't you say you were going back to the old house? Why are you still playing with your phone?" As he said that, he swiped her phone a few times and looked at her. "How old are you? You're still playing with this? Why can't I play with it?" She looked at him. He sat over and leaned against the head of the bed. Then he looked at her. "You're going to be a mother. You can read books and drink tea. It sounds like the life of an old woman," she said uninterestedly. "And I didn't say I want to be a mother. Don't add to the drama." He laughed. "What if we have one this morning?" She looked at him, her eyes a little wide. He did the same. He stared straight at her, not letting go of her expression. Bai Shuili bit her lower lip. "What if we really have one?" He still didn't say anything. She threw herself into the bed and snorted. "I don't care. I don't want to give birth." He wasn't angry when she said that because he knew she wouldn't. He leaned over and said in a low voice, "You don't like children? It's a little annoying." She looked at him. "If you want a child, you can give birth yourself." He smiled and pulled her into his arms with one hand. "I'll take care of you after you give birth. I'm sure you'll be healthy and chubby. I've already lost weight. How can a child be healthy and chubby?" She looked at him doubtfully. "Besides, you're so busy. Forget it." She looked disinterested and lay down lazily again. Yulin said in a low voice, "You don't believe me? I don't believe you." She stuck out her tongue. He didn't argue with her too much. Instead, he dragged her up. "Okay, go change your clothes. We'll talk about the child later." She couldn't argue with him, so she went to change her clothes. Since she was going back to the Yi residence, she changed into a more ladylike outfit. It was a Chanel suit and a limited edition handbag that Lawyer Yi had bought. Yulin tilted his head to look at her and coughed softly. "Why aren't you wearing the ring?" She looked down at her empty fingers and smiled faintly. "I'm not used to wearing it. I'm afraid I'll drop it." He looked at her, took a ring out of his pocket, held her hand, and put it on for her. She looked up at him, and he smiled. "You're not leaving, huh?" She didn't say anything and clenched her fingers. She felt that it was swollen. It should be because she hadn't worn the ring for a long time, right? It was almost 4 o'clock when he took her downstairs. In the car, she sat next to him and gently stroked the diamond ring with her fingers. Yulin did not speak to her, but directly started the car. After a while, she found that the car did not drive to the Yi house, but to Intai Square. "Buy some gifts." He looked at her and said softly, "Tell me, how long has it been since you last visited Mom? She even washed your clothes for you." Bai Shuili nodded and went down with him to stroll around. Chapter 34:23. Yulin walked into a boutique. "Let's get a set of coffee cups. My father likes coffee." Bai Shuili couldn't understand. "This is for your mother. Why do we have to look at your father's preferences?" He picked up an exquisite cup and looked at her with a smile. After a long time, he asked softly, "Shueli, you really don't understand?" She was confused. "Understand what?" He smiled, put down the cup in his hand, and picked up another one. All his actions were pleasing to the eye. Bai Shuili looked at him with envy. He picked carefully because he didn't dare to have the same taste as her, so she stayed by his side. Later, because she was bored and tired, she hugged his arm gently and put half her body weight on him. He turned his head and asked softly, "Tired?" She nodded and rested her face on his shoulder, listening to the shop assistant talking to him. He listened very patiently and would look at her later to ask for her opinion. She wasn't very interested. "I'm not particular about this. Instant is fine. But I like it," he said, and went to talk to someone else. Bai Shuili sobered up a little and looked at him again. She thought she understood what he meant before. Why did he have to buy his mother a gift that his father liked? In the end, he was the one who decided and took 2 sets. "Why 2 sets? Does your father like to smash cups at home?" She looked at him. Yulin paid. "We'll keep one for ourselves." She nodded and walked out with him. She thought they were going to leave immediately. However, after he put the gift box in the trunk, he looked at his watch. It's still early. Let's shop for a while more. She was embarrassed. Yulin, what's wrong with you today? Didn't you say that I won't accompany you? He smiled and held her hand as they walked towards the elevator. Her heart skipped a beat, and she didn't come back to her senses for a long time. When they got into the elevator, she wanted to break free from his hand. He didn't let go and wanted to move away a little. Suddenly, a large group of people rushed into the elevator, filling it up. Baishuali could only stand beside him obediently. The two men in front of her squeezed over. She bit her lip and felt very uncomfortable. Just then, taking her hand, he gave it a little tug, and she fell instantly into his arms. Her face was pressed against his chest, and her nose was filled with the pleasant scent of his tobacco. His arms were hugging her, preventing her from coming into contact with anyone else. It wasn't that she hadn't hugged him before. They had stripped naked countless times, but there had never been a moment like this. There had never been a moment where she felt so close to him. They were husband and wife. They were very close. He would stand in front of her at any time. Her body was a little stiff at first, but she slowly softened her body and let herself stick to his embrace. His palm landed on her back, gently stroking back and forth as a form of comfort. Baishuali was suddenly possessed by a baby. Her slender arms wrapped around his waist and hugged him tightly. After a long time, his deep voice came from above. Baishuali, how much longer do you want to hug me? Startled, she looked up. The elevator had already arrived, and there was no one inside. She looked at him. Lawyer Yi said slowly, when the elevator door opened, everyone stared at you for more than 3 seconds, including your perverted hand. She exploded. I didn't, but very quickly, she realized that he had let go of her long ago. At this moment, she was hugging him tightly with a face full of infatuation. Chapter 34:24. Baishuali stared at herself in the mirror. Then, she bounced away and hit the wall behind her. It hurt so much that tears welled up in her eyes. Yulin reached out and pulled her into his arms. He gently rubbed the back of her head. His voice was low and husky. How can you be a mother if you are so careless? You always talk about having children. If you want to have children, find someone else to do it for you. She rolled her eyes at him. As Yulin rubbed it for her, he kindly explained to her, according to the law, only spouses can mate and give birth to legitimate offspring. Baishuali stared at him. Copulate. Yulin smiled slightly. Isn't that right? According to the law, only with a certificate can you have the legal right to copulate. She still stared at him. Animal. Her head no longer hurt. She walked out and walked in front. Yulin followed behind her. After a while, he dragged her to his side. She looked at him and bit her lower lip. She still held his arm and leaned against him as if she had no bones. He looked at her sideways and didn't say anything. Baishuali looked at an LV store in front of them and said softly, let's go there and have a look. Yulin looked at her and then at the store. You want to buy a bag? She didn't seem to like this brand. She usually liked pink and girls' products. Baishuali didn't say anything. She just dragged him in. However, she didn't look at the bag. Instead, she looked at the scarf. Yulin saw that she took a black and gray cashmere scarf. He understood what she meant and smiled slightly. Baishuali gestured to herself in the mirror and then glanced at him. You bought the coffee cup, and I bought this for Mom. When she said the word mother in a slightly childish tone, Yulin felt an indescribable warmth in his heart. She was actually very simple. No matter how much she quarreled with him, she still respected his mother very much. Does it look good? Rice Worm tilted his head. It's warm and comfortable. He smiled. It's pretty good. She seemed to be dissatisfied with his answer. She screamed. What do you mean it's pretty good? It's obviously pretty good, okay? You men only know how to do useless things. As a woman, a gift that is worn on her body is more considerate. As she spoke, she even gestured on his body. Is it comfortable? Actually, she didn't mean to ask. It was just a simple chat. But just as she finished speaking, Yulin held her waist and pulled her closer. His voice was low and husky. Comfortable. She was stunned for a moment before realizing that he was taking advantage of her. She bit her lips. Yulin. He smiled and let go of her. He took a pink scarf from the side and handed it to the shop assistant. Wrap this up too. She watched him make the payment and whispered, "Is Mom suitable?" This is for my wife." He looked at her. Then, the rice worm's little face turned red. He smiled, picked up the bag, and walked in front. Rice worm immediately followed. "I didn't say I liked it. Didn't I say that the gift has to be worn on the body?" He held her hand. "It looks good on you. It should be very comfortable, right?" The rice worm's face turned even redder. Yi Mulin was definitely the most indecent lawyer. Chapter 3425. When they reached a toy shop, Shiwali couldn't walk anymore. She saw a Mimi rabbit, which was quite cute. Yi Mulin walked in front of her. When he realized that she didn't follow him, he turned his head and looked at her. She was looking at the rabbit and couldn't move her eyes away. To be honest, he never thought that his little wife liked these things. She should like shiny jewelry. That was why women were complicated. He walked back and didn't ask for the price. He took it and went to pay the bill. After that, he threw it into her arms. "It's for you." Shiwali looked disgusted. "Who asked you to buy it? I'm not that childish." He looked at her, paused for a moment, and looked around. Then he coughed. "If you don't like it, give it to that little girl." As he said that, he wanted to take it back from her arms and give it to a 10-year-old child. Rice Worm was anxious and hugged it tightly. "Why do you have to give it to someone else?" "I didn't say that I don't like it. Don't you think it's childish?" He looked at her. She snorted. "You're the childish one to argue with me." She hugged the little rabbit angrily and walked forward. That awkward look on her face was very pleasing to him. In fact, Shiwali was like this when she was young. She was always awkward in front of him and didn't say much. She was eloquent in front of Mubai, but Mubai didn't appreciate it. She was walking in front of him, her hips swaying. He found it funny to see her. She didn't grow up. He followed behind her and asked kindly, "Have you thought a name yet?" "Big White?" Shiwali snorted. "Yi Mulin." He made a long O sound. Then, "Do you want to hug it to sleep at night?" Shiwali stopped and turned her head. "Yi Mulin, can you not take advantage of me all day long?" He looked at her and smiled flirtatiously. "You took the initiative this morning. Moreover, we are legally married and have a legal right to mate and have children. If I don't take advantage of you, who else should I look for?" She stomped her feet and ran away. After a while, she ran back because she went the wrong way. This time, she let him walk in front while she followed him with the rabbit. It was still awkward. After walking for a while, Yi Mulin suddenly grabbed her and placed her in the crook of his arm. "Let's go together. I'll be worried if I don't keep an eye on you." She bit her lip and said stubbornly, "I can't even walk properly." He just smiled and didn't want to argue with her. The people around them looked at their awkward expressions, but they felt that it was so sweet that the air was tinged with sour water. When they arrived at the car, it was already 5:30 p.m. When they drove back to the Yi house, it was 6 p.m. dinner time. In the car, he kindly told her, "Today is my mother's birthday, but it's not a grand celebration. We only invited friends and relatives. We set up 4 tables and held it in the old house. There's no buffet, just a meal." Her eyes widened, but he said lightly and continued to drive. Shiwali held her breath. "Why didn't you say so earlier? What's the difference between saying it earlier or later? We bought a present." He was still looking forward. "Give her your present later. My mother will be very happy." Shiwali was still unhappy. "The whole world knows about our divorce. So now, let others know that we're fine." He was still calm. She held her breath. Is this the purpose of this banquet? Her defensiveness made him a little uncomfortable. He controlled the steering wheel with one hand and held her hand with the other. "Shiwali, don't see everything so utilitarian. It's just a family banquet. Don't you want to go?" Chapter 3426. She looked at him, pursed her lips, and said nothing. He put his elbows on the steering wheel, and his expression was gentle. "If you don't want to go, I'll send you back to the apartment." Then he sighed. "But my mom might be very sad. She loves you very much, you know." Shiwali looked at him eagerly. He smiled and didn't force her. Instead, he reached out and gently rubbed her hair. "What about now? Do you still insist on going back to the apartment?" She looked up at him. "Yi Mulin, do you look down on me? If you don't go, coward, I'll despise you." He smiled slightly. and his smile was very beautiful. I'll go back and teach you a lesson, because if I go alone, I'll lose face. Her eyes slightly widened. He smiled. You have a wife, but you still go home alone like Mumbai. Don't you think you'll lose face? She still looked at him. He sighed. I'll send you back. As he spoke, he started the car, but the worm hurriedly grabbed onto his arm. He looked at her. Baishuali's voice was very low. Didn't you buy the gift? He smiled. Do you mean to go to the old house? She didn't say anything, and she quickly turned her face to the side. She was sulking. She didn't know whether she was angry at him or herself. Yulin chuckled. He didn't say anything and started the car. It was only at the red light that he would hold her hand when he was free. In the beginning, our little worm would throw him away in disgust, but he would still hold her hand. After a long time, she was too lazy to throw him away, but her little face slowly turned red. When they arrived at the Yi house, she sat in the car and saw many cars parked there. They were all famous cars, but the models were very low-key. Her father's car was also there. She looked at Yulin. He slowly unfastened the seatbelt. Afraid? My dad? He's very unhappy because of us, she said softly. Yulin smiled. He'll be happy if we come back together. He opened the door and was about to get out. Seeing that she was still sitting there without a backbone, he sighed. I'm here, what are you afraid of? Baishuali said, and then pouted. Help me open the door. He smiled. If you want, I can carry you in. She let out a strange cry and immediately opened the door to get out of the car. When the two little ones walked into the night house together, they naturally attracted a lot of care. After all, the previous incident was too unseemly. It was rumored that they had separated, but outsiders had no way of knowing whether it was true or not. The Yi clan's eldest brother had always been serious. Who would dare to care about his private life? But at this moment, eldest brother Ye's usually stern face was filled with gentleness. He held his wife's hand and walked across the luxurious and bright hall until they reached Father Yi and Mother Yi. Yulin put down his coffee cup and looked at his little wife. Baishuali held the bag of scarves and looked at Mama Yi eagerly. Mom, happy birthday. Mama Yi was wearing a cheongsam tonight. It was a little cold, so she took out her scarf and put it on. Then, she patted Baishuali's head and said, You're so considerate, unlike the cold things that Yulin and Mumbai gave you. I knew at a glance that they were cups. There are almost 100 sets at home, and he still bought them. I really don't understand what these men are thinking. Chapter 34:27. Baishuali didn't have any pockets, so she left her bag in the car and put it in Yulin's pocket. Yulin looked at her and smiled. Accompany Mom to socialize. She nodded and was about to go over when Mama Yi smiled. Let Shirley accompany you. Mama Yi came over and patted her eldest son's shoulder. You look like you can't leave your wife. She teased her eldest son like that, and Yulin agreed. Baishuali became shy and hugged Mama Yi's arm. I'll accompany Mom. Mama Yi patted her, and Baishuali's mother came over. Mama Yi smiled. Look at Shirley, she's so spoiled. Mama Bai came over and patted her daughter's head. You have to teach her well. She doesn't know anything. Mama Yi smiled. That's good. Yulin can love his wife. They talked and drank like that. There were many friends and relatives around them. Baishuali couldn't stand it. She secretly looked at Yulin, hoping that he would save her. Yulin looked at her with a smile. Finally, he found his conscience and dragged her over. He smiled. I'll bring Shirley to the table. She hasn't eaten anything today, and she's hungry. Mama Yi and Mama Bai looked at each other and smiled. They were relieved to see their son and daughter being so loving. However, even though it was a family banquet, it was still a high-class meal. It was a French meal after all. Whatever liver or sauce was not enough. Hence, when they left the Yi house, Baishuali turned her head sideways and asked, Yulin, don't you think that tonight's meal was a little small? He started the car and looked at her. It's always like this. Don't you like French food? Baishuali replied with an, oh, and then said softly, actually, other than French cuisine and these high-class dishes, Chinese food and even midnight snacks are also very delicious. Yulin, don't you want to try? He looked at her. She put her little hand into his pocket. Mom, didn't you give me a red packet? I have money. I'll treat you. He focused on driving and said very slowly, Did you think of coming out for supper when you were eating dinner? Then he tilted his head. You've been away from home for a period of time, and you've completely become wild. Wild little white? She asked him with a smile. Yulin looked at her approaching face from the corner of his eye and her smiling face. His heart skipped a beat. Without saying anything, he slowly stopped the car by the roadside. After a soft sound, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her. She stared at him with wide eyes. She wanted to speak, but every word was forced into his mouth and swallowed. She obediently allowed him to kiss her, her little hands quietly hugging his waist. After a long time, he released her and licked his lips. The taste of caviar. She kissed him. Do you want to taste the barbecue later? Yulin looked at her and smiled. Are you really hungry? She nodded vigorously. I haven't eaten much today. After saying that, she stared straight at him, her eyes full of desire. Yulin thought for a moment and suddenly said, I'm hungry too. His eyes were so clear that she only took a few seconds to understand what he meant by hungry. She stammered, Didn't we do it in the morning? He sighed and reached out to stroke her hair. You've been hungry for a long time. Chapter 34:28. She looked up at him, and then her face turned red. She bit her lips and said, You asked for it. His eyes were still staring at her, and his voice was low and husky. If I don't ask for it now, will you not starve me again? What? What? She leaned her head against the back of the seat and looked at him in a daze. Yulin took a step forward and stretched out his hand. She screamed even louder. What are you doing? He buckled her seat belt and chuckled. Going to eat barbecue. The one we went to last time? She nodded and stared at his face as if she couldn't believe that he would let her go so easily. Yulin reached out and rubbed her head. What are you thinking about? Carsy again? No, you only have 1 minute in the car. She looked at him with a mischievous look in her eyes. Cece saw it from upstairs that day. Yulin chuckled as he drove. Then did you tell her that your husband usually goes up for more than an hour? She turned her head and ignored him. Shameless. He looked at her side profile and smiled. He drove the car to the door of the shop where he found her last time. The car was parked at the place where their car Z was. No matter how stupid she was, she could sense his bad intentions. When she unfastened the seatbelt, she looked at him. Do you want to savor the feeling of 1 minute? He pinched her face. It's not that boring. Why would I care about an aperitif when there's a big meal? He paused and became serious. Actually, I prefer to do this kind of thing on the bed. Or the bathroom is fine. The car is too small. Baishuali blushed. Yulin, can't you let me have a good meal? He smiled and got out of the car. When he was about to open the door for her, she had already jumped out. He shook his head and sat down behind her. He watched her order food skillfully. This was a very cheap shop. It looked a little out of place. Moreover, most of the people eating here were young girls in their early 20s. Yulin took out his phone and checked the messages for a while. He dealt with some urgent matters and then waited patiently for his wife to order food. Watching her say a long list, he couldn't help but look at his watch. It's almost 10 o'clock. Can you eat so much? She rolled her eyes at him. That's why it's called supper. Yulin smiled and did not say anything else. He had been very gentle. The young ladies around him all looked at him and secretly pointed at him. Firstly, he was good-looking, and secondly, he exuded a cold, noble, and elite temperament from head to toe. This kind of man was especially popular these days. Yulin didn't notice it and didn't care. Riceworm, who had just finished ordering, saw it. He bit his lower lip and said, attracting bees and butterflies. He looked at her, then looked around and chuckled. Jealous? Why would I? You're still under observation. If you don't feel well, I'll still leave. Riceworm gently flipped his hair and said in a muffled voice, My appetite isn't very good anymore. Yulin, why are you so hateful? She tugged at his sleeve, petulantly. If he was a little uglier and didn't have such a good temperament, he wouldn't be able to attract young girls like this. That was how AI Wei was recruited by him. Yulin chuckled. Then, does that mean you won't be interested in me? She glared at him. I don't really like you right now. Chapter 34:29. Bai Shuili ignored him and took out her phone to look at the entertainment news. Even though it wasn't nutritious, it was enough to entertain her. Yim Yulin used to say that she was shallow, and she showed him how shallow she was. How could he not know what she was thinking? He drank the cheap oolong tea. He wasn't used to the taste of it in the past, but now it was still passable. After a while, the waiter came over with the roasted meat. He looked at Bai Shuili. "Can you finish it?" Riceworm looked at him strangely and said slowly, "This is only half." He laughed. She then added, "Don't I still have you?" Yim Yulin's expression was indifferent, but he still ate with her. Bai Shuili's mouth was stuffed full, and she asked him while eating, "Isn't it delicious? It tastes really good, right?" Yim Yulin nodded. "Yes, it's okay." Riceworm was so satisfied that her eyes were curved. She ate with one hand and took a roasted lamb chop for him. "This is good, try it." He took it and seemed to be stunned for a moment. Then he smiled lightly and said, "Okay." Bai Shuili looked at him and smiled too. She then focused on eating. She would give him a skewer from time to time, and he would give her 2 skewers too. After a while, the boss would bring over a huge plate. He glared at her. "Can you finish it? Look at how much you've already eaten." Bai Shuili stuck out her tongue. Her slender fingers were a little greasy as she reached out to grab it. Yim Yulin helped her share the burden helplessly. In the end, he really finished it all. He was a little surprised himself. When he paid the bill, it was more than 800 yuan. He paid, and that riceworm hugged his arm in satisfaction while rubbing her tummy. "I used to live at Cece's house, and I could only eat such a big meal every 3 days. I've been thinking about it for a long time." He was a little helpless, but also a little sad. He turned his head and warned her, "You're not allowed to have a stomachache with me when we get back." Her face blushed, and she hugged his arm, pressing her face against his. Through his shirt, she could feel the warmth of his body. It was so comfortable that she wanted to sleep. After Yim Yulin paid, he half-hugged and half-carried her into the car. She was sleepy, but his car drove smoothly. When they arrived at his apartment, it was already midnight. The apartment was especially quiet except for the occasional sound of Xiao Bai. He put his arm around her and walked into the bedroom, feeling a little smug. The riceworm woke up and made a fuss about going to see Little White first, but he stopped it. Using the momentum, she fell into his arms. There was a faint smell of tobacco and barbecued meat on his body. It smelled good. She raised her little face and bit his neck, saying stupidly, "I'm not full yet." He put his hand around her waist and pulled her into his arms. His voice was low and hoarse. "I'll let you eat, okay?" "No way." She buried her whole body in his arms, but after a while, she sniffed here and there. He pressed down on her little head and pulled her hair up. His voice was hoarse. "I'm not full either. I've been hungry for a long time." As he spoke, he kissed her. It wasn't a deep kiss, but a light peck at the corner of her lips, touching her soft skin bit by bit. Chapter 34:30. His body was mixed with many kinds of smells. It was very charming. He turned into the most superior village medicine, spring medicine, teasing her. She took the initiative to accept the mellow red wine. Then, she felt that it was not enough. She kicked off her high heels and stood on his leather shoes with her bare feet. 2 slender arms wrapped around his neck. When the kiss ended, he whispered at the corner of her mouth, "Do you want more?" She bit his lips and snorted. He picked up the red wine bottle with a low smile and took another sip. This time, he directly sealed her lips. This time, he pushed her to the soft bed. She lay on the pillow. Her hair was messy and very tempting. At least, it was a temptation that Yim Yulin could not bear. The kiss became more and more lingering. Their fingers intertwined. She had long been confused and infatuated, but he just had to whisper at such a time, "Call my name." Riceworm opened her eyes and stared at him in a daze. Her red lips slightly opened and her voice was hoarse. "Yim Yulin, what's wrong with you?" He bit her hard. Something's wrong. She was being teased by him. She was waiting for the important moment to come, but he was being unreasonable. She kicked him angrily. "Yim Yulin, are you a man?" He chuckled delightedly and wanted to tease her. "If you call me the right one, I'll give it to you and make you feel good. Okay?" She bit her lips and stared at him. "Yim Yulin, you're a jerk." She kicked him a few times to vent her anger. But when did Lawyer Yi fail to get what he wanted? Not only did he not give it to her, but he also tortured her even more. Bai Xueli was tortured badly by him. In the end, she turned her face to the side. Her fair face was dyed with a layer of seductive color. She called softly, "Husband." The next second, Lawyer Yi did what she wanted. He was very strong and also very cruel. Yi Mulin had handled countless large-scale divorce cases. They were all big shots and wives. He had heard those women call their unfaithful husband's husband with tears in their eyes. He used to think that the word was disdainful and belonged to a resentful woman. But at this moment, when it came from her little mouth, he was so excited that he could not control himself. He wanted her to call him Yulin, but she called him husband under the heat of passion. It was natural for them to be very powerful. They also looked like newlyweds who had not seen each other for a long time. She was very obedient, hugging him obediently and doing whatever he wanted her to do. As a man, he was unprecedentedly satisfied. It wasn't until 3 o'clock in the morning that he finally hugged her to take a quick shower and lay down together. However, when he was lying down, he felt that something was wrong. His stomach felt uncomfortable, but he didn't mind it. He hugged his wife and closed his eyes. The little wife in his arms had already fallen asleep. In the darkness, there was only the soft sound of little White crawling around. He laughed softly, his mouth full of contentment. He was a man in his 30s with a successful career and a beautiful wife at home. He seemed to lack nothing. Just like that, he slowly fell asleep. However, he still woke up at 5 o'clock. His stomach was ringing. Yi Mulin wanted to hold it in, but he couldn't. When he came out of the bathroom for the third time, his body was weak. He didn't have the same murderous spirit he had when he whipped Bai Xueli that night. He sat on the edge of the bed in his pajamas and pushed Bai Xueli. He called her name softly, "Xueli, little White." She was still asleep. She turned around and hugged his arm. He stared at her, not sure if the little White she called was old Bai. Chapter 34-31. Yi Mulin's face darkened as he pointed at his belly. The rice bug crawled over and pressed her little face against his lower abdomen. She listened and said, "You mean I made you pregnant?" Yi Mulin was so angry that he laughed. His anger towards her disappeared, and he glared at her. "How did I get pregnant? I thought you were invincible," she said gloomily. Before she could ask again, he had already pulled her hair and pushed her to the side. He walked quickly to the bathroom. After a while, a rather spectacular sound came from inside. Bai Xueli stuck out her tongue. So her husband had diarrhea. She walked over barefoot and knocked on the door. "Elites also have diarrhea? I thought you guys wouldn't get sick." They had been married for a few months, and he did not seem to have gotten sick. But now it was over. She did not know why, but she was quite happy to know that he would be weak and sick like her. His slightly hoarse voice came from inside. "Change your clothes and drive to the hospital later." "I drive?" She scratched her hair. "Didn't you say that I was a road killer?" "Shut up." He was a little annoyed, and his temper was terrible. However, she felt that he was a little cute like this. She immediately went to change her clothes, although she was very sleepy. She took the car key. It was the white BMW that she used to catch the adulterer in the past. She came out neatly. Lawyer Yi also came out of the bathroom. His expression was indescribable. He looked at Bai Xueli and said in a low voice, "Let's go." "Aren't you going to change your clothes?" she asked softly. His face darkened. "No need. Just take my wallet with you." Bai Xueli looked at him and ran to the changing room to get a windbreaker for him. She said, "It's cold outside and it's early in the morning." She yawned. "Men are so troublesome." He snorted. "Why didn't you say it was troublesome when you were comfortable last night?" She faked a smile. "Are you not comfortable? I remember that you were so comfortable that you kept sighing." He wanted to say something but held it back. His expression was indescribable. Bai Xueli was very happy. When she walked out, she said to Xiao Bai, "Xiao Bai, be good at home. I'll take Dad to the hospital." He followed slowly behind her. "When are you going to have a baby?" He couldn't keep raising a little tortoise like a child, right? Bai Xueli immediately supported him and said earnestly, "Look, I'm tired enough to take care of you. Are you sure you want to add another child to my burden?" Yi Mulin looked sideways at her. "Bai Xueli, where's your face?" After saying that, he pinched her cheek. She immediately screamed, "It hurts, it hurts." Only then did he let go of her, weakly leaning against her as they walked towards the elevator. When it finally got to the car, he didn't sit in the front, but laid down in the back seat. His voice was also weak. "Drive slowly," she said with a kind face. "I'm afraid you won't be able to endure it." After saying that, he forcefully turned a family car into a sports car. Yi Mu-lin, the eldest son of the Yi family, his usually elegant face looked as if he had eaten xiang. "By Xueli, slow down." He coughed lightly. She paused for a moment before saying, "You didn't agree when I asked you to slow down." His face was livid. Was she taking revenge? His face darkened. "If I'm fast, you'll feel comfortable. If you're so fast now, will I feel comfortable?" Chapter 34-32. His face darkened, but he didn't say anything because he couldn't hold it in anymore. He closed his eyes and held it in. This was the most embarrassing moment of Yi Mulin's life, thanks to the big meal she had last night. By the time they arrived at the hospital, his face had already turned pale from enduring it. When she helped him out of the car, she finally found her conscience and whispered, "Let me help you to the bathroom first. Don't endure it anymore. It's better than if it's a little shabby." He had no energy to argue with her, so he quickly went to the bathroom to relieve himself. When he came out, his steps were even more unstable. Riceworm immediately went to help him and called the emergency department. The doctor looked at him. "Did you eat anything special last night?" "A barbecue. A Michelin chef's meal," they said at the same time. Yi Mulin's voice was restrained. "By Xueli, do you think a Michelin chef's meal will make people have diarrhea?" "But I also ate barbecue, and I didn't have diarrhea." She blinked. "You are discriminating against ordinary people." He was annoyed by her, so he kept silent with a cold face. The doctor laughed and lowered his head to write the test report. "Go and check." Bai Xueli took the report and slowly said, "I need to do a blood test." She turned to look at Yi Mulin, and his face became paler as she wished. It turned out that he was afraid of injections. Yi Mulin said softly, "Just take some medicine." "How can you do that? How can a man be afraid of pain?" The doctor looked at him and then at Bai Xueli. "Family member, please comfort him." Yi Mulin felt embarrassed and walked out. Bai Xueli followed behind him, holding his arm and supporting him. "Hey, the doctor asked me to comfort you." He looked at her. "You are very happy." "Absolutely not very happy, just a little bit." She gestured to him and then coaxed him. "I will hug you later." "Be good. Don't be afraid. I am here." Yi Mulin shook his head, feeling angry and amused at the same time, but the corner of his mouth still raised a little. Riceworm secretly looked at him, thinking that her husband was really a little sick. When she arrived at the nurse's office to draw her blood, she was about to leave when he called out to her. "Come here. Didn't you say that you were going to comfort me?" Bai Xueli stared at him and said very slowly, "You're a man, and you're afraid of pain?" But she still came over. Yi Mulin grabbed her directly and held her in his arms like he was holding a doll. The nurses all laughed, but they did not dare to laugh too loudly because they knew that this was the eldest son of the Yi family. Lawyer Yi was very powerful. What if they laughed and he sued them until they went bankrupt? Bai Xueli bit her lip as he hugged her. "You really can't tell." The nurse took the needle and pierced it into Lawyer Ye's delicate flesh. He groaned and hugged him even tighter. "Yi Mulin, be gentler." "I'm in so much pain," she cried out in his arms. He bit her neck. The riceworm cried after being bitten. So in the end, he was the one who inserted the needles, and she was the one who cried. The nurse felt a little embarrassed. Both of them were calling each other too much. So she took the blood and went to do a test immediately. Yi Mulin was still hugging Bai Xueli. She was hugging him, angry and panting from time to time. He said hoarsely, "Am I the one who is sick, or are you sick? Why are you still in my arms?" Chapter 34-33. "Oh," she said and looked up. "Are you done?" His face darkened. "Yes." Bai Xueli coughed lightly. "Does it hurt?" "It's okay," he said with a sullen face. Suddenly, he said, "I'm going to the bathroom." "Oh," she said again, but Yi Mulin didn't move. She looked at him strangely. "You're not going?" "Paper." His face was even more sullen. Bai Shuili hurriedly gave him a tissue, and he quickly took it and left. She looked at his back view and smiled until her eyes narrowed. Yu Mulin looked a little cute like this. Yu Mulin stayed for about 10 minutes before he came out. When he came out, his complexion looked even worse. He looked a little weak. Bai Shuili went to help him. "Are you okay?" Yu Mulin gritted his white teeth. "What do you think?" She bit her lower lip. When she was about to speak, the nurse said, "Mr. Yi, your test report is out." Bai Shuili threw him to the side. "I'll go get it." Then, she ran quickly to get it. Yi Mulin looked at her back, and his face darkened. When she came back with the report, Yi Mulin was gone. She looked for him for a long time and found that he was in the bathroom. He went again and again. Ah, poor little chrysanthemum and flower. Bai Shuili thought happily as she waited patiently outside. After a while, he came out and put his weight on her shoulder. He took the test report from her hand and looked at her. "What else is there to say?" "What does it say?" Riceworm looked innocent. "I don't know it." He reached out and held her chin. "You don't know Chinese?" She forced a smile. "I've been abroad for a long time, so I don't know." "Yellow skin and white heart." He sneered. "I'll check it later." Riceworm hugged his waist and buried her face in his chest. "Your stomach is too delicate. I'll be fine after I eat it." He lowered his head and looked at her angrily, but she was hugging him so tightly that her furry little head was like a little animal in his arms. No matter how angry he was, he couldn't be angry anymore. Besides, she had made him feel good last night. He sighed and caressed her. "Help me to the emergency room." She nodded and obediently helped him over. The doctor took a look and said, "It's moderate gastroenteritis. You'll need 2 bottles of intravenous drips. It's fine if you don't, but it'll take a lot longer to take the medicine. Right now, people don't have time to take it slowly, and it's easy to collapse." "Put him on in 4 drip," Bai Shuili said. "He's very busy." Right after she said that, Lawyer Yi glanced at her and said, "Bai Shuili, did I say that I need in 4 drip?" Ricebug looked at him with some disdain. "I know you are afraid of pain." Lawyer Yi sneered. "Do you think I'm afraid of pain? Then poke one for me to see." She bit her lips and looked at him provocatively. Yi Mulin sneered even more. "I will teach you a lesson when we get back." The doctor couldn't help laughing and gave him the list. "Stay in a temporary ward. You can go back after the drip. Remember to keep warm and take the medicine. It's best to rest for a day. After all, people are not made of iron." Bai Shuili took the list and went to pay the fee. Then she found a small ward with her husband. Before she said anything, her husband disliked it very much. "How can we live in such a small ward?" Chapter 34-34. He lay down and glanced at her. Bai Shuili stuck out her tongue. "I'll call the nurse." He stopped her. "Is there a washroom here?" She looked for it and came back. "Yes. It's a little shabby." He didn't look well. To be honest, the eldest son of the Yi family had never lived in such a shabby place. Riceworm coaxed him. "It's just 2 or 3 hours. Don't bother the nurse. Look, others have stayed up all night." Hearing her words, his expression softened a lot, and he kept looking at her. Her words were what he wanted, so he pulled her over and looked at her quietly. Bai Shuili stared at him and said in a low voice, "You're not allowed to kiss me. I think you smell like the restroom, and it's the public restroom." Yi Mulin's face darkened, and he threw her hand away. "To be honest, I'm not happy either. It's hard to please you." She made a face and ran away immediately. But she didn't know that Yi Mulin looked at her when she ran away. Looking at her back, a faint smile appeared on his lips. It was a very shallow smile. Bai Shuili quickly called the nurse. When the nurse gave Yi Mulin an intravenous drip, Bai Shuili stared at his expression. He glanced at her. "What are you looking at?" She whispered, "Call me if it hurts. You can hug me." He snorted and ignored her. Bai Shuili watched the nurse give him an intravenous drip. Yi Mulin frowned, but didn't withdraw his hand. "You're so brave." She praised him with a smile. Yi Mulin stared at her fiercely and endured the pain. After that, he didn't look at her and lay on the small bed. The nurse smiled slightly and was about to go out after that. Bai Shuili stopped the nurse and coughed. "What if he has diarrhea later?" Yi Mulin gritted his teeth. "Bai Shuili?" She looked innocent. "I'm telling the truth." Otherwise, how could you carry him to the washroom? The nurse smiled. Mrs. Yi, you can help him. There are hooks inside. Try not to let the patient take off his pants. Bai Shueli asked foolishly. Who will help him take off his pants? The young nurse smiled again and glanced at her with a you look. Bai Shueli was immediately terrified. Why was it her? She still wanted to say something, but Yi Mulin dragged her onto the bed. He hugged her tightly with one arm, as if he was hugging a baby. Bai Shueli was originally a little stiff, but she slowly relaxed and complained, I'm so tired. Loosen up a little. He refused and rested his chin on her hair. It hurts. She was stunned for a moment and blinked her eyes. After a long time, she finally understood. She turned around in his arms and looked at him. Yi Mulin, are you acting coquettishly? No. With a black face, he pulled her into his arms again and pressed her down hard. He rubbed her furry little head and treated her like a doll. After a while, she burst out laughing. So it turned out that Yi Mulin could also act weak and mean. It was really funny to see him like this. Perhaps because she laughed too much, Yi Mulin held her tightly in his arms. She laughed until she didn't have the strength to struggle. In the end, she couldn't take it anymore and cried, Yi Mulin, I can't breathe. Only then did he let go of her. Chapter 34-35. She looked at him and smiled. What if you want to go to the toilet? Let the nurse help you? He stared at her and said proudly, I'll hold back. Bai Shueli looked at him. Really? He didn't speak, turned over and lay flat, covering his eyes with his hand. Bai Shueli's heart softened when she saw that he didn't look well, and she knelt beside him to cover half of the quilt for him. She whispered, Then I'll buy you some soy milk and porridge, something light. He still covered his eyes with one hand, but he caught her hand and threw it away. Take the money from the wallet. She took 200 yuan from the wallet, but she was still worried when she left. Yi Mulin, you have to hold back. He took away her hand and glanced at her. The rice worm immediately jumped away. Because she didn't buy breakfast for herself, it took a long time. It took her half an hour to come back. When she came back, she found Yi Mulin's face was very sullen. Help me to the bathroom. She stuck out her tongue, helped him hold the 4 bottle, and then carefully tried to please him. Have you been holding back for a long time? Lawyer Yi gritted his white teeth, and his voice was trembling. What do you think? She smiled embarrassedly and helped him to the bathroom. The door was closed. At this time, the nurse came with the doctor, wanting to see the situation. And in the bathroom, such a conversation happened to be going on. Bai Shueli, quickly take it off. You're so stupid that you can't even undo a belt? It stuck. After a long time, a voice gnashed. Unzip it first, idiot. Oh. After a while. I can't unzip it. Can you control yourself? You're like this. Who asked you to touch me? How can I control myself? The doctor couldn't bear it anymore. Come back in half an hour. Really, the patients nowadays don't take care of themselves anymore. The 2 nurses followed behind with blushing faces and looked back from time to time. Don't tell me he really did it? In the bathroom, the 4 bottle was hung up. Lawyer, you looked at Bai Shueli. You go out. Bai Shueli was stunned and didn't move. His face darkened. Bai Shueli, do you want to stay and look at my butt? She let out a long, oh, before curling her lips. It's not like I haven't seen it before. There's nothing special about it. He sneered. Then why couldn't you zip it up just now? She recalled the scene just now and immediately ran away. Hurry up. Call me when you're done. The honorable lawyer, Yi only allowed himself to stay inside for 5 minutes. After he came out, it took him 10 minutes to wash his hands. She looked at his meticulous manner and felt a little unbearable. After Yi Mulin finished relaxing, he threw his body onto the bed and then sat up and looked at her. I'm hungry. Go ahead and eat. Bai Shueli glanced at him and said strangely. The eldest brother of the Yi family raised one hand. I'm on a drip. How can I eat? Feed me. Although she really wanted to ask him if his other hand was crippled, when she thought of his pitiful face, her heart softened. She first opened a packet of soy milk and fed it to him. After drinking half of it, she fed him a pillow of porridge. She fed him so kindly, but he didn't say a word of thanks. He directly finished eating and lay down. I want to sleep. Call me when you're done. Chapter 34-36. He was clearly asleep, but she had just finished putting away her things when he pulled her over, one arm hugging her bossily as he slept. His body was a little cold against her back. Bai Shiuli was soft-hearted. She pulled the quilt to cover both of them and said worriedly, "I have to look after the forge rip. The nurse will come later." He said in a low voice, "Sleep with me for a while. I'm so tired." This was a man's usual trick, but it worked every time. Bai Shiuli stopped making a sound and obediently lay in his arms like a doll. His body slowly warmed up. He put his palm on her back and pressed her into his arms. The room was quiet. When the nurse came to remove the forge rip, she was very gentle. Yi Mulin woke up and looked at the nurse. The nurse whispered, "You're awake. Go and do the procedures." Then she went out. They all knew Lawyer Yi. He was a famous person who spent 10 million to stay in the hospital for a few days. After the door was closed, Yi Mulin lowered his head and looked at the little girl in his arms. He smiled and closed his eyes. He was indeed tired, not only because of the food he ate, but also because of the time when he didn't have a rice worm for more than a month. He knew that not having trouble by his side was the biggest trouble. Eating, drinking, and sleeping were not the same as before. She had become his concern. He would feel very sad if she wasn't by his side. Yi Mulin opened his eyes and gently traced her eyebrows. He used to think that her eyebrows were too European style, but now they seemed to be much more delicate and delicate. He smiled. After marrying him, she had indeed become more traditional. He gently moved over and kissed her lips lightly. Then he reached out and held her hand. The worm cupped its head and snuggled into his arms. Its small mouth rested on his chest, and the breath it exhaled was hot, messing up his heartbeat. In a short while, it became hot and humid. He pressed her shoulder and wanted to push her away. However, in the end, he could not bear to do so. Instead, he kissed her on the forehead. He was so gentle, but she still woke up. Her eyes were wide open. "Are you done?" Yi Mulin squinted at her. "If I had waited for you, I would have probably died." She stretched her head out from his embrace and was relieved to see that the forge rip had been removed. She lay on her stomach in a daze for a while before she suddenly opened her eyes. "What's wrong?" he asked softly, thinking that he was already very gentle with her. He was a patient, and he thought he was taking care of her, wasn't he? But his little wife opened her eyes wide and sniffed left and right. He had a premonition that something bad was about to happen, so he was about to warn her with a dark face when she asked, "Yi Mulin, did you notice that the smell of the toilet is getting stronger on you? Did you wipe yourself clean?" His face was completely dark. He immediately lifted the quilt and straightened his clothes. Bai Shiuli sat on the bed. "What's wrong with you? I'm afraid I'll suffocate you." He snorted coldly and opened the door to leave. Bai Shiuli blinked her eyes. Was he really angry? So she jumped out of bed and chased after him. Yi Mulin was paying the bill. He threw a bag in her arms and walked quickly in front of her. However, he was always a sick person, so he didn't have his usual vigor. Instead, he seemed to be bluffing. Riceworm stood and looked at him. She laughed, but after a while, she couldn't laugh anymore. He should be feeling uncomfortable now, right? He still had to force himself to endure it. Were all men so childish? She ran over and hugged his arm. He stopped and looked at her. "Didn't you think I smell bad? I'm a little used to it." She smiled at him foolishly. He snorted coldly and walked forward. She supported him as if she was supporting Empress Dowager Ci. He couldn't stand it anymore. "Bai Shiuli, I'm not that weak. I can't be bad to you, and I can't be good to you either. Why are you so picky?" She complained in a low voice, but she still supported him obediently. Yi Mulin glanced at her, snorted, and let her support him as she wished. When they arrived at the parking lot, he directly sat on the driver's seat. Bai Shiuli was not happy. "I'll drive. You're a road killer." He snorted. "Sit there." Chapter 34-37. She sat in the passenger seat, buckled her seatbelt, and asked worriedly, "Yi Mulin, can you do it?" It turned out that it was a mistake to doubt a man's ability at any time. He just glanced at her and immediately started the car. Bam! Her head hit the back of the chair, and it hurt a lot. "Yi Mulin, you're so childish." Bai Shiuli touched her head. I've taken care of you for so long, and this is how you treat me. He looked at her sideways and snorted. You said I can't do it. You just can't do it, Ethan. She wasn't afraid of him and said angrily. Yulin looked at her for a while and sneered. Not bad. Go on. She didn't dare to. She snorted and looked at the road ahead. Drive properly. In an instant, his eyes softened and he stopped talking. After a while, he took out a cigarette from the console and lit it up. He took a long drag. Baishuali looked at him and pursed her lips, but she didn't say anything. The car drove back to the parking lot of the apartment. She unbuckled her seatbelt and said, Let me help you out of the car. He looked at her. You finally said something reasonable. Although she was angry, she still opened the door to help him. When she opened the door, Yulin was sitting in the car with a reserved look. He looked at her and said softly, Now I finally know why the sense of ceremony is so important. She couldn't help asking, Yulin, what did you feel? He was helped out of the car by her and looked down. It feels good to be chased by someone. Baishuali couldn't stand it. We've been married for a long time. Besides, haven't you always had a crush on me? He looked at her and smiled. It's different now. You said you're married, so what happened in the past doesn't count. She couldn't be bothered with him. He was sick and turned into a young girl. When they got home, Yulin couldn't stand it and wanted to take a shower. He even ordered Rice Worm to scrub his back. Rice Worm was furious. Why do I have to scrub your back? I took you to the hospital before dawn. I just want to sleep now. Sleep with me or scrub my back. Choose one. His black eyes stared at her. Rice Worm was shaken by his shameless attitude and said dryly, Is there another choice? He was still staring at her. Yes, I choose the third one. She gathered her courage. Yulin said slowly, The third is for Sisterly to scrub my back. At the end of his sentence, his voice was almost a whisper. He took a few steps forward. You're willing to let her see my naked body? I'm not willing. The poor worm was forced into a corner and stammered as he pressed his back against the wall. Then, he was dragged into the bathroom. 10 minutes later, the huge bathroom was filled with steam, and the luxurious bathtub was filled with a fragrant smell. She squatted behind him and wiped his back bit by bit. Be more careful, he said with a touch of disgust. And efforts to help him clean. I'll take a bath after I'm done pooping. She suddenly thought of something, and her face turned bitter. Can I take a shower? You despise me? He pulled her from behind and pulled her into his arms. The tip of her nose bumped into his chest. Her chin locked. It was supposed to be an erotic scene, but he had turned it into a brutal one. Baishuali bit her lip. Let's take a bath then. I'll help you scrub your back. Chapter 34-38. Baishuali's eyes widened, and she looked at him. What do you mean? He threw the towel to her and said, Now wipe the front. Baishuali put her hand on his shoulder and looked helpless, above or below. He was not in a hurry and held her hand. Where do you want to wipe? She looked pitiful, and her voice was like a mosquito. Can you close your eyes? He looked at her. Shouldn't you be the one with your eyes closed? He paused. Baishuali, you want to do something to me when I don't know, don't you? You think too highly of yourself. She gritted her teeth and snorted. And she closed her eyes and wiped randomly. Yulin leaned against her comfortably. His gaze fell on her tightly wrinkled face, and his expression was joyful. When it was almost time, he grabbed her hand and said, That's enough. When she finally laid down on the bed, she fell into a deep sleep on top of his chest in extreme exhaustion. In a daze, her little hand was still drawing circles on his chest. You're sick. You're too good at torturing people. The patient who should have fallen asleep was much more energetic. He leaned against the headboard and put his hand on her back, smiling gently. He saw that it was still early and sent a message to Secretary Lee, saying that he would go to the office in the afternoon. He put down the phone and lay down, hugging her to sleep for a while. Mother didn't know how she got the news that he was sick. Even though it was his birthday yesterday, she still asked Father Yi to come to see her son. The door was opened by Aunt Lee, who said softly, Lawyer Yi is asleep, and he doesn't look well. I heard that he went to the hospital last night. Mother Yi said softly, Then we'll take care of him here. Aunt Lee, you can go back first. Antley was not worried and quickly took off her apron. Then I'll go first. I made some delicious food for the two little ones and kept them warm. Don't worry, madam. They are all nourishing. Mother Yi was very satisfied and sent Antley to the door. She turned around and saw Father Yi sitting on the sofa, who rarely went to work. She smiled and said, I'll go and have a look. Father Yi said softly, the young couple is sleeping. Why are you going? Mama Yi disagreed. Mulan is sick. Shirley only took care of him for one night. She must be asleep now. Why can't she go? They are all her children. As Mama Yi spoke, she had already walked towards the master bedroom. She walked to the door and carefully opened it. Looking through the crack of the door, she couldn't help but smile. She waved to Papa Yi, come and see. Father Yi was in a high position and had seen everything. But yesterday was Mrs. Ye's birthday. He said that he would accompany her today. Unexpectedly, his son was sick and he was dragged here. Although he didn't want to, he still felt that it was too much of a fuss, so he went over. Standing together with Matriarch Yi, she couldn't help but stare blankly. His steady son was currently sleeping on his side, but what kind of sleeping position was this? His long arms and legs were holding his wife like a doll. Bai Shiuli's face was full of pain, but she was still able to sleep. This couple. Father Yi had nothing to say. Mama Yi laughed. That's good. I'm relieved. She walked to the sofa with Papa Yi and said with a smile, I used to be very worried about Mulan and felt that he was not easy to get close to, but now it seems that their relationship is really good. Chapter 34-39. Mama Yi didn't agree with him. It's not a bad thing to value relationships. Father Yi glanced at her. Mubai can, but Mulan can't. Perhaps because his gaze was too sharp, Mama Yi was stunned for a moment. After a long time, she said in a low voice, What's wrong with you? Isn't it a good thing that Mulan and his wife are in love? You used to think that he was too focused on his career and was afraid that he wouldn't get married. Father Ye's gaze fell on her face. After a long time, he said calmly, I just said it casually. Why are you so relieved? Mama Yi also looked at him, as if she was thinking about it. She had been married for many years and knew that her husband was unfathomable. But there had never been a moment when he was so difficult to understand. So she looked at him for a while. Father Ye's tone became gentle. Why are you looking at me like that? Mama Yi smiled lightly. Then why are you looking at me like that? Father Yi sighed. I just said it casually. You're angry again. Weren't you happy yesterday? Although Mama Yi was smiling, her expression didn't relax. Father Yi only calmed down after a few cold and elegant words of coaxing. However, Mama Yi couldn't help but say, They're all your children. Why are you so biased? You've always been relaxed towards Mubai. Mulan has been strict with you since he was young. Are you going to interfere with a normal marriage now? Are you going to let him have no joy in life? Father Yi couldn't do anything about this wife. He looked at the direction of the bedroom and smiled helplessly. Isn't he enjoying it? Even his father didn't have such a good life. He's still sleeping with his wife. Mama Yi sneered. As your son, he doesn't even have the right to be sick. That's not what I meant. You've really misunderstood me. Father Yi sighed. Look, now that you have children, you don't care about me anymore. This was considered a concession, and Mama Yi did not say anything more. She was originally a lady from a prestigious family, and she was not like the Bai family, which had a weak foundation like Bai Shiuli's. She could get along with Papa Yi for so many years and firmly hold on to him. So it was impossible that she did not have any ability. Mama Yi just glanced at him. Of course, there was the affection between an old couple. Papa Yi looked at her and got up. All right, I'll prepare lunch. You go and wake the two little ones up. Mama Yi followed her to the kitchen and looked around. Add 2 more dishes. As he said this, he stared straight at him. The night father smiled warmly. Are you instructing me? Mama Yi didn't say anything. Papa Yi put his arm around her shoulders and coaxed her. All right, just take it as a make-up birthday celebration for you. What else could the night matriarch say when the superior was so subservient? Looking at the dishes he was going to prepare, he was satisfied. He went to the master bedroom to call his son and daughter-in-law for dinner. When the door was pushed open, his face turned red. The two little ones woke up. Her precious son was pressing down on the little girl and kissing her. The quilt slid down halfway. Mama Yi saw that her son's figure was really good, strong, and the scene was really beautiful. Just like Korean dramas, the night matriarch was once young. She just enjoyed it for a while. Yi Mulin still noticed his mother's presence. He immediately pulled up the quilt and whispered, "Mom, why are you here?" Chapter 3440. After Mama Yi finished speaking, she even winked lightly. She had to work harder, or 10 minutes wouldn't be enough. She closed the door. Bai Shuali looked at Yi Mulin with her eyes wide open and said softly, "Did your mother see us kissing?" He snorted, then lowered his head to kiss her again. The kiss was a little deeper. Riceworm pushed him away. No, did she see it? He had just peeled her like a boiled egg, and so had he. Her eyes were getting bigger and bigger. She bit her lip and kicked him. "How can you do it like this? Yi Mulin, you bastard." He pressed her down and said, "Kick me again, and I'll tie you up." She couldn't move. She looked up at him and said, "Don't move again. Your parents are here." He looked at her, smiled, and said slowly, "My mother said that we still have 10 minutes. Don't waste it, Shueli." As he spoke, he lowered his head and kissed her deeply. His fingers clasped her tightly. She struggled, but she couldn't win against him. In the end, she let him have his way. 10 minutes later, he got out of bed refreshed and went to the changing room to get some clothes. He threw a set to her. "You still want to do it?" She threw the clothes on his face angrily. "Yi Mulin, you're so bad." He smiled. "I'm still sick. You treat me like this?" She sat on the bed and looked at him angrily. "You weren't a weak patient just now." He smiled more freely. He buttoned his shirt and walked over to pinch her face. "Men are all like this. Do you think I'm still a man when you hug me like that? I don't know if you're a man or not. I only know that you're not a human." She glared at him. Yi Mulin laughed. "Are you really that angry?" He picked up her clothes and put them on for her. He said in a low voice, "Let's go out for dinner later. It's rare for Mom and Dad to come together." His voice was very gentle, and Riceworm enjoyed it very much. She lowered her head and said, "Oh," and let him put on the clothes for her. He looked at her, smiled, and pinched her little face. When he went out, Father Yi had already prepared the meal. However, he was a man and knew what his son had done just now. He didn't look happy or sad. He just cared about her. He could live with his wife, so his body was fine. Yi Mulin's expression was like a gentle breeze and drizzling rain. He was also gentle towards Bai Shueli and served her food from time to time. Although she had been married into the Yi family for a few months, it was rare for her to have a meal with Father Yi. Mama Yi was very loving. She personally took some food and gave it to Bai Shueli. "Eat more. I heard from Andy Lee that you took Mu Lin to the hospital last night. It was quite hard." "Oh yes. How did Mu Lin get a stomachache?" "That was a Michelin chef last night. I will ask him later." Bai Shueli pursed her lips and wanted to say something. Yi Mulin put his palm on the back of her hand and smiled. "Mom, I drank a glass of ice water last night. It has nothing to do with last night's dinner." Mama Yi was annoyed and amused at the same time. "You're already in your 30s, and you're still drinking ice water so late at night. How are you going to take care of Shirley like this? What if you have children in the future?" Yi Mulin smiled. "I won't." He looked at Bai Shueli and suddenly said to his parents, "Shueli and I are going to have a baby." Bai Shueli was stunned and looked at him. Chapter 3441. Yi Mulin looked at her and smiled slightly. "What's wrong? Are you stupid? Didn't we agree on it?" His eyes were unfathomable at the moment. She seemed to be sucked in and couldn't move. She could only nod gently and say in a hoarse voice, "Yes, we want a child." Mama Yi looked at the two little ones and scolded her son with a smile. "Why are you so serious when you are looking at such a good thing? You scared Shueli so much that she has to look at your face. I just said that you are too strict with her. Husband and wife are not subordinates, and she is not your secretary or those little lawyers. You should be gentle." Yi Mulin looked at his mother with a faint smile. "Mom, do you think I am not gentle with Shueli?" He said and looked at Riceworm. "What do you think?" Bai Shueli's voice was soft. "It's quite good." She looked at him carefully. That careful look made Mama Yi not know whether to laugh or cry. She was still very strict and didn't dare to make a sound. However, she thought of how her son had done whatever he wanted her daughter-in-law and felt that it was just right for a young couple like them. The man was strong and the woman was weak. They would be more peaceful when they were older. Mama Yi didn't ask any more questions, and the whole family had a harmonious meal. After the meal, Mama Yi washed the dishes. Riceworm was embarrassed to play alone, so she followed Mama Yi. They had a good relationship, and Mama Yi didn't mind that she didn't know anything. She just taught her patiently. Bai Shiwili didn't know why, but she was a little sad to be loved by such an amiable elder. This was probably her compensation for marrying Yi Mulin, so she was even more clingy, holding Mama Ye's arm and wouldn't let go. Mama Yi taught her something in a soft voice. After washing the dishes, she made a pot of scented tea and went to the balcony to drink. Just when the two women were relaxing, Yi Mulin was called to the study by Papa Yi. The atmosphere was not so relaxed. Papa Yi motioned for him to close the door. Yi Mulin was very mature and knew his father very well. He expected that he had something to say, so he lowered his body on the door and didn't come over immediately. Instead, he looked at his father quietly. "Dad?" Papa Yi looked at his son. There was some gentleness in his eyes, but more than that, there was sternness. "Are you serious about having a child?" "Of course it's real." Yi Mulin smiled and came over to take the treasured cups of coffee. He handed one cup to Father Yi. Father Yi looked at the familiar cup for a long time and then said softly, "The set you gave me, is it the same?" "Yes, I picked it out with Shweli the other day. She picked it out and said that you would like this style." Yi Mulin seemed to be holding the cup casually and took a sip. Father Yi was also playing with the cup. After a moment of silence, he said, "She has good taste." Then, his expression became somewhat unfathomable. Yi Mulin's fingers tightened around the cup. Then he said calmly and relaxedly, "It wasn't good before, but it's not bad now." Father Yi glared at him. "Don't use the past to provoke her. It's all in the past. Who doesn't have a past? Besides, there's nothing between her and Mubai." Yi Mulin smiled. "Father, are you pleading for her?" Chapter 3442. He stood up and walked towards the door of the study. Yi Mulin also put down his hand and looked at his father's back. Father Yi stopped at the door and turned back gently. "Surely looks like a child from an ordinary family. She doesn't look like a child from the Bai family at all." Yi Mulin's heart skipped a beat, and he called out softly, "Dad." Father Yi's eyes became a little deep and unpredictable. He looked straight into his son's eyes and smiled lightly. "Mulin, you haven't called me Dad for a long time." He had always called him father respectfully. His eldest son, Z, was very perceptive. It was a pity that he didn't follow Z. Yi Mulin took a few steps forward and whispered as if he was begging, "Dad, I like Shirley very much. I have liked her for many years." It was not a confession, but a request. As smart as he was, he had already felt the atmosphere of storm. Father Ye's expression didn't change. He smiled lightly. "Didn't you say you want to have children? That's good. It's best if you can have a pair of twins at once." Yi Mulin couldn't be obsessed with his words, so he just smiled. Father Yi patted him on the shoulder. "Mulin, you've grown up." After that, Hanju looked at him deeply, opened the door, and went out. Yi Mulin stood for a while before going out. He took 2 steps and then turned back. Father Ye's cup of coffee was left on the desk without a sip. He looked at it quietly for 2 seconds and hurried out. After going out, he heard Mother Yi complaining, "You've only been here for a while and you want to leave. You are a heartless father." In this world, probably only Mother Yi dared to say that to Father Yi. She said it with a little coquettishness. Father Yi hugged her. Children also need a private life. He took Father Yi with him and looked at the young couple deeply. "Your mother and I are waiting for the good news." "Mulin, don't let me down," Yi Mulin said with a smile. He held his rice worm with one hand and rubbed her hair. After a while, he seemed to think of something. "Go and hug Mom to say goodbye." She went over and hugged Mother Yi. Mother Yi's heart ached. She wished she could make some treasures out of her body and give them to her little wife. She shook for a long time, but didn't shake. Bai Shuali looked at Mother Yi in confusion and asked in a low voice, "Mom, do you want me to scratch you?" Mama Yi smiled reservedly. I'll bear with it. By Shiuli nodded. At this moment, Yi Mulin spoke again. And what about Dad? The worm stared at him. Does Dad want a hug too? Yi Mulin's gaze was a little deep. She couldn't understand it. Mama Yi was also a little confused. When did her son become so generous? But she still wanted her husband to be more friendly, so she stood aside, which was equivalent to acquiescence. Bai Shuili braced herself and stepped forward to hug Father Yi gently. Dad, Father Yi's expression had the gentleness of a superior. He patted her shoulder and said, Go home with Melindo when you have time. She nodded and watched the two old ones go out. Mama Yi turned back and winked. Next time we go back, I have something good for you. Rice Worm's eyes curved into crescents as he smiled. Thank you, Mom. I'll take good care of Mulin. Mama Yi was very satisfied. She kept praising her when she went out. Inside, Bai Shuili saw Yi Mulin frowning as soon as she closed the door. She snorted in dissatisfaction. Look, Mom and Dad just left, and you're about to reveal your true nature. Chapter 34-43. She struggled and screamed as he pressed her down. Actually, she knew what he liked. Thus, the more she struggled and screamed, the more indulgent he kissed her fingers, until the two of them couldn't stand it anymore. He stopped and looked at her from above. What's wrong? She was confused by his gaze. Her little hands pulled on the buttons of his shirt. Her eyes were full of love. If she was like this in the past, he would never let her go. But now, Yi Mulin thought about what his father had said. He thought about all the details carefully. The way he frowned was also very beautiful. She just lay there. Her white fingers gently stroked his eyebrows and looked at him carefully. Yi Mulin withdrew his gaze. He looked at her and smiled. Why are you looking at me? She hugged his neck. What were you thinking about just now? The expression on her face was too cute. It was completely immersed in love. He looked at her and smiled. I was thinking about having a child. When he mentioned this, she couldn't help but protest. I didn't say I wanted to have a child. What if I didn't agree? Yi Mulin kissed her wantonly. His fingers were entwined with hers. He kissed her until she almost couldn't breathe. Then he asked her in a low voice, What about now? Are you willing? Rice Worm's eyes were like water. She bit her lip. No. He directly did it on the sofa. She screamed and hugged him. Her voice was trembling. Yi Mulin, you're crazy. You just got better. You still want to take medicine. I don't want to eat anymore. He breathed in a low voice and kissed her lips lightly. Why would he need medicine when she was here? Her eyes widened. She looked at the handsome face in front of her that was slightly distorted because of passion. She didn't dare to look at him, so she closed her eyes. But he didn't let her go. He murmured, Shuili, look at me. He put his hand on her back and held her in his arms, holding her sweetly but with a trace of pain. Yi Mulin only knew at this moment that love was sweet and sour. But no matter how sour it was, he couldn't bear to let go. In the heat of passion, he firmly held her hand and softly spat out the emotions he had never shown to others. Holding your hand, we will grow old together. She stared at him with wide eyes. He could not stand such an innocent gaze. He lowered his head and kissed her. His hands held her tightly, just like how he had forcefully intervened in her life. Between the ups and downs of life and death, she vaguely heard him murmuring, Bai Shuili, since you started, don't give up so easily, understand? She didn't really understand. However, he was unwilling to say more and just kept occupying her. For a patient's physical strength, this was a little too good. When it was over, she snuggled into his arms and said, It's cold. Yi Mulin held her in one arm and held a cigarette in the other. He was smoking after the meal. Bai Shuili was annoyed and angrily took the cigarette, but from his lips. You said you were going to have a baby, and you still smoke. He had asked for it twice just now, but he didn't take any precautions. Yi Mulin looked at her in confusion. Ricebug said somewhat angrily, Just now you didn't even use that. He didn't care about the cigarette, but gently touched her lips. You mean condom? She was furious. Contraceptive. Chapter 34-44. When he bent down again, she put her hand on his shoulder and said softly, No. Yi Mulin stopped and looked at her. Riceworm hugged his waist shamelessly and buried her face in his neck. I'm tired and it still hurts. Yulin chuckled and rubbed her gently. Does it still hurt? No. Her face was so comfortable against his warm skin that she wanted to sleep. He was afraid that she would catch a cold, so he carried her back to the master bedroom. It was very quiet in the afternoon, and it was suitable for them to sleep together. She was half asleep and said in a low voice, Yulin, do you want a boy or a girl? He was silent for a moment and reached out to rub her hair. I want a boy. As for the reason, they both knew. Baishuali yawned and didn't object. She just said in a low voice, then you have to work harder. He smiled, lowered his head, and kissed her forehead. He didn't say anything. After she fell asleep, he got up quietly and prepared to go to the office. He didn't forget that he had an important appointment at 3 o'clock. Baishuali woke up as soon as he came. She opened her eyes and hugged him from behind softly. You still want to go to the office when you were sick? He turned around and kissed her for a while. I have something important to deal with. You can sleep for a while. She grunted vaguely and lay back, drifting into sleep. Yulin buttoned up his shirt and fastened his belt. He was going to leave, but when he saw her sleeping softly, he felt a little reluctant, so he bent down and kissed her for a while. Then he said in a hoarse voice, I'll come back early. She opened her eyes and put her arms around his neck. Lawyer Yi, can I ask for leave? He raised his eyebrows. Riceworm looked at him carefully and said very slowly, Gu Changfeng came back from abroad. He invited me to dinner, and I agreed. I told you last time. Yulin was still looking at her with a somewhat deep look. Her little hands played with his buttons fawningly, and her little hands touched Momo West's. You can't be so stingy, I've promised her. But I will never break my shoes during dinner. He was so angry that he laughed. He reached out and pinched her little face. Send me the restaurant's address. I'll pick you up after I'm done. I'll drive, she said weakly. Take a taxi. I'll pick you up later. Be obedient, he insisted. Otherwise, you're not allowed to leave. She hugged him tightly, domineering. But are you going to listen to me? He hit her, but and looked at her with a burning gaze. The riceworm rubbed its little face against his. Be good. He laughed and pinched her face in revenge. I shouldn't have promised you. Keep your distance, okay? She let out an O sound. Yulin got up with satisfaction and went to the changing room to pick up a gray windbreaker before leaving. She lay on the bed and looked at him. He looked really good in his trench coat. As she watched, her heart warmed up and she rolled a few times on the bed. After a while, his phone rang. It was a message from Yulin. Sitting in the car, he typed, Bring your phone with you when you go out. It's convenient for me to check on you. She held her phone and replied him with a few words, Bossy. Yulin smiled, started the car, and left. When he left, his eyes fell on the BMW that she often drove. After a few seconds, he looked away. After a while, he thought of something and dialed her number. Baishuali picked it up. Chapter 34:45. She sticks out her tongue. Got it. Yulin hangs up the phone with a smile and focuses on driving. His stomach is still a little uncomfortable, so he asks Secretary Li to make him a cup of Shu Wei Ning. Didn't he say that he doesn't need to take medicine? After drinking it, he feels much better. After a while, the client comes over. It is a very important criminal case, so Yulin still spends a lot of energy on it. After sending the client away, he raises his hand and looks at his watch. It is already 5 o'clock. He stretched himself and asked Secretary Li, You don't have any appointments today, right? Secretary Li shakes her head. No, Lawyer Yi. If you're not feeling well, you can leave in advance. Yulin is about to speak when his phone rings. He looks at it and finds that it is a message from Baishuali. She and Gu Changfeng have an appointment at Xianlin Restaurant, which is not far from the office. Yulin puts his phone in his pocket and says lightly, Everyone has been working hard these days. Secretary Li, please count the number of people and order a meal at Xianlin Restaurant. Xianlin Restaurant? Team building? Lawyer Yi is so generous. The average consumption of Xianlin Restaurant is 2,000, which is the best of the high-end restaurants in B City. They usually don't want to eat in Xianlin Restaurant, even if they want to buy a bag. Secretary Li is very excited. After announcing the news, the office is boiling. The female lawyer and the secretary are complaining that they are not dressed well enough and carry their bags well. As Secretary Lee expects, all of them are present and no one is absent. There are more than 20 people, and it is less than 100,000 yuan per person, which is enough for Lawyer Yi. She immediately booked a table and came over to meet Yi Mulin. Yi Mulin had already started to prepare to leave. He took his briefcase and walked out. Secretary Lee watches her boss leave happily and then quickly goes to touch up her makeup. The people of the office gather in the parking lot of the restaurant and go in together. As soon as they go in, they are stunned. Is the woman who is sitting with a super handsome man still Lawyer Ye's wife? Wow, she is really radiant today. She looks like her first love. Secretary Lee takes the lead and stops. Then he looked at Lawyer Yi. He thought he would see Lawyer Ye's dark face, but it was like a spring breeze. He walked directly to Mrs. Yi and leaned over to kiss her lips. Let's go back together later, and Bai Shuli looked up at him. Yi Mulin. He straightened his body and stretched out his hand towards Gu Changfeng. Mr. Gu, long time no see. Gu Changfeng stood up and shook his hand. Yes, I haven't seen you for a long time. Many things have changed. Yi Mulin smiled. It's different for Mr. Gu, but for me, everything is the same. It's good. With that, he leaned over and whispered to his wife, "Don't drink." Rice Bug grunted in acknowledgement and watched him walk into a large room at the side. The atmosphere in the private room was rather gloomy. Yi Mulin lit a cigarette and looked around. What's going on? Secretary Lee said in a low voice. Lawyer Yi, why don't you handle your family affairs first? He laughed dryly. What kind of family matters could there be? It was Shirley who made an appointment with someone to eat here, so I booked this place and brought her home. His attitude was the same as usual. Slowly, everyone believed him, and the atmosphere warmed up again. Chapter 3446. On the other side, Bai Shuli heard the phone ringing and took a look. It was from Yi Mulin. There were only a few words, "Don't drink," or she felt ashamed of the ellipsis at the end. He was so shameless. Her face was tinged with a faint blush, and she hurriedly threw down her phone. Gu Changfeng smiled faintly. Is it from Yi Mulin? Bai Shuli quickly denied. No. How could it be him? It's an advertisement. Gu Changfeng smiled. At this time, Bai Shuli's phone rang and the name of Yi Mulin shone brightly. The atmosphere was a bit strange. Riceworm squeezed out a smile. Well, it's a coincidence. She picked it up and said in a low voice, What's up? Yi Mulin said in a low voice while smoking. Why didn't Bai Shuli reply to my message? I am eating. She said the 4 words with the utmost familiarity through gritted teeth. The other side smiled gently. Then I won't bother you anymore. Bai Shuli put down the phone and looked at Gu Changfeng. Gu Changfeng, old people are all like this. Gu Changfeng smiled. Really? The old person you're talking about is Yi Mulin? Of course. She leaned closer to him. You don't even know that there's a generation gap between him and me. Old people are just stubborn. They can't be persuaded, and they're especially stubborn and rich. It's as though he's the richest person in the world. Look at how he's so ostentatious when he's building a team. Gu Changfeng held the aperitif and was still smiling. Bai Shuli was satisfied after complaining. She was about to eat the delicious food when a gloomy voice came from behind. I am an old person? Stubborn, and rich, huh? Riceworm was stunned on the spot. The fork in her hand fell, making a crisp sound. She didn't turn back, but looked at Gu Changfeng, biting her lips. Gu Changfeng, why didn't you tell me? Gu Changfeng smiled. I wasn't sure that you were talking about Lawyer Yi, but now it seems a little late. There was a touch of regret and disappointment in his eyes. She fell in love with this strong man after all. Yi Mulin smiled at Gu Changfeng and placed his hands on the girl's shoulders. He exerted some force and said, I will settle the score with you later. After saying that, he left and didn't send any more harassing messages. However, Bai Shuli's heart trembled as she ate the meal. Gu Changfeng looked down and said, Shueli, have you ever thought whether you are afraid of him or afraid that he'll be angry? Is there a difference? She picked up the fork listlessly. Gu Changfeng smiled faintly. The difference is quite big. Think about it carefully. He changed the topic. Oh, right? I have something to tell you. I want to take a theme photo for an international award. I've looked for a lot of models, but none of them are what I want. Finally, I thought of you. I think you're very suitable. Do you want to try? Bai Shuli was a little dumbfounded. Me? Be your model? He nodded and took out a large stack of money from his bag. After counting it, there seemed to be hundreds of thousands of yuan. Here's 500,000 yuan. The shooting time is 3 days, but we might have to go somewhere else. Think about it. He looked at her seriously. Bai Shueli's eyes sparkled as if she had seen money for the first time. Chapter 34:47. Bai Shuelin stared at the 500,000 yuan. After a long time, she asked in a low voice, "As long as you take a few photos, they will all be mine, right?" Gu Changfeng smiled, yes. After that, Bai Shueli had already put the 500,000 yuan into her Hermes platinum bag. She said in a low voice, "I'll take it." Gu Changfeng leaned back and chuckled. "Don't you need to discuss it with Yi Mulin? Why should I discuss my own business with him? Besides, I'm making money for my family," she said childishly, but she was a bit annoyed. She only put about 200,000 yuan into her platinum bag, and it was stuck when there was still 300,000 yuan left. Gu Changfeng gave her the bag with a smile. "Put it in this. Why didn't you say so earlier?" She glanced at him and put the money in the bag quickly. Gu Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he realized that she did everything slowly. There were only 2 things that were especially fast. One was chasing men, and the other was counting money. But she had chased after all the men, but the one she married was the one who had been chasing after her all the time. Gu Changfeng chuckled softly, but it was a bitter smile. He didn't tell her that the series he was going to shoot was called First Love. He did find a lot of models, but he couldn't catch the innocence in their eyes and what he wanted to express. Bai Shuli was the only one who could give him what he wanted, so he came to her. He had never felt that his presence would cause any changes to Bai Shueli's marriage, because Yi Mulin had always been the dominant one between her and Bai Shueli, and always had been. Gu Changfeng whispered, "Are you sure you want to go to Sea City?" Bai Shueli looked at him and said slowly, "Won't you go to shoot pink grass?" He smiled. "You know that too? I am an internet celebrity." She took a sip of wine and bit her lip. It should be okay. The point was that she had been paid, so she had to convince the old man. Gu Changfeng didn't say anything more, but just gave her a contract. He had mixed feelings during the meal. He couldn't tell whether Yi Mulin's appearance was good or bad. He had no romantic thoughts, neither did Bai Shueli. But that man showed up in such a big way, which showed how much he cared about her. Gu Changfeng thought to himself that it was good. In the end, he still left early. It was not even 8 o'clock. He stood in the hall and whispered, "I'll wait for your news." The crystal light in the hall shone on his face, making him look clean. Bai Shueli suddenly felt that he was really a very good person, so good that the things she had done in the past seemed particularly inhumane. His mood was a little complicated. For the first time, he was reflecting on whether he had hurt someone. He absent-mindedly replied, "Can I tell you, tomorrow morning?" He smiled, as if he wanted to reach out and touch her head, but then he retracted his hand. "All right, I'll go back first." He looked inside. "Hurry up and go in. Don't run around." Bai Shueli nodded. She was quite obedient. She and Gu Changfeng had known each other since they were young, and she had a guilty conscience when it came to relationships, so she was especially nice to him. Gu Changfeng looked at her deeply before leaving. Bai Shueli looked at his back for a while and didn't go in immediately. She just casually sent a message to Yi Mulin. Chapter 34:48. She thought to herself that it was not suitable for her to go to the team building. She put away her phone and wanted to go out to take a taxi. But she had only taken one step when Yi Mulin called her. She picked up the phone and said, "You come here." His voice was gentle. "Wait for me. I'll be ready in a moment." Bai Shueli suddenly turned around and saw Yi Mulin standing not far away with his phone in his hand. She bit her lip and walked over. "How much longer do you have?" He took the bag from her and frowned. "Have you been drinking?" "A little," she whispered and looked at his face. Yi Mulin helped her carry the bag and held her shoulder with one hand. "Go in and eat more." "I'm full." She looked at him strangely. Yi Mulin chuckled. "You met your first love. I was afraid that you wouldn't be in the mood to eat and would only be looking at her." She was furious. Stop slandering me. But when they entered the private room, she slapped herself in the face, because he had ordered a few of her favorite dishes for her. So she was full and ate for a while, feeling very satisfied. She put down the chopsticks and met his gaze. She bit her lower lip. It's my favorite food? Yulin drank his tea slowly and smiled. Didn't Gu Changfeng order for you just now? How would he know what I like to eat? She whispered. Yulin, you are too petty. Everyone here is from your firm. Can't you be more shameless? He had brought a whole firm of people to catch them in the act. Yulin glanced at her, smiled, and didn't say anything. But his eyes fell on the extra bag. He felt that it was money and it was given to her by Gu Changfeng. Why did Gu Changfeng give her money? Yulin didn't say anything and poured her a glass of red wine. Bai Shiuli didn't drink it and just chatted with Secretary Li. The atmosphere in the surroundings was also very peaceful. Yulin played with the glass in his hand and smiled. Do you want to go to the club to relax? Bai Shiuli looked at him. He smiled. What's wrong? You've just recovered. You can't drink, and you have to drive, she reminded him. Yulin was sitting with her, so he naturally put her on his shoulder. He said to his subordinates in the office, I won't drink. I'll just participate. Secretary Li naturally gave face to her boss the most and said, Lawyer Yi is responsible for paying. Yulin smiled. I drink too much. I'll have half a day off tomorrow. Fuck, there was actually such a thing. The group of people was boiling with excitement. However, the boss smiled again. You are about the same age as Shirley. She likes to play too. You can take her with you later. As an old man, I will sit by the side. Bai Shiuli wasn't a fool. She knew that this was a mission given to her subordinate to make her drink. She had no choice but to whisper, Aren't we supposed to prepare for pregnancy? He smiled but didn't say anything. It's okay to drink some red wine. As he spoke, he seemed to recall something and opened Bai Shiuli's bag. My wife is treating us today. He pulled it open, and inside was the shiny, white money. Bai Shiuli's heart ached. That was the money she had earned. How could he take it away so shamelessly? But in front of so many people, she couldn't do anything. She could only watch. Chapter 3449. It hurts. Bai Shiuli slapped his hand away and stared at him. How could he use her money and touch her cheese? Yulin stretched out his long arm and put it around her shoulder naturally. He looked at her and said, As the boss's wife, can't you bear to pay for a meal? I don't earn money. You should pay for it. Riceworm struggled. This was the first time she earned money. How could she let him spend it on her? She had to spend it on herself. Yulin still looked at her and chuckled. Where did it come from if I don't earn money? Oh, I remember now. It must have been taken from my account. No, it's Gu Changfeng's reward. She was anxious and told him everything. She regretted it as soon as she said it. She blinked her big eyes and looked at him. She was afraid that he would be angry. After all, he cared about Gu Changfeng very much. Unexpectedly, he didn't get angry. He gave her face in front of his subordinates and touched her head. Our Shiuli also earned money. Then we should celebrate it. Riceworm was touched and found that she fell into his trap, so she stared at him. Lawyer Yi rubbed her face. Mrs. Yi, I will save money for you. She believed him. However, after half an hour, she almost wanted to strangle him to death. He was the one who picked the clubhouse, and he picked the most luxurious clubhouse in the whole of B City. Even a bottle of wine cost tens of thousands. She counted the money in the bag, but it was not enough, and his subordinates didn't come to drink. They came to drink water as if it was tap water. Bai Shiuli sat next to Yulin and felt sorry for her small money. Secretary Li made her drink 1 or 2 glasses. Even if she didn't drink, her husband would come over and chat with her. She would drink while chatting. At the end of the party, she probably drank a bottle of red wine and was half drunk. When she took the money to pay, it was more than 980,000 yuan. Bai Shiuli looked at her husband sideways. Lawyer Yi leaned against the bar and said in a relaxed voice, I can pay, but there is a condition. What condition? Her voice was a little soft. She felt sad when she thought that she could only pay half of the money after a few days of work. Yulin's eyes were a little clear. He stood up and pinched her soft face. I will tell you when we get home. She watched him pay the bill and couldn't help but ask, Aren't you angry? Just as he was about to sign, he paused for a moment, but he still signed quickly. The cashier bowed respectfully. Yi Mulin walked a few steps and then turned his head. You mean you promised Gu Changfeng to work for him? She said nothing and just looked at him. She wasn't sure if he would agree, because he hadn't touched the money. Everything he did tonight was probably just to tease her so that she could explain herself clearly. There was nothing going on between her and Gu Changfeng, but she still felt a little guilty. After all, they had been together for a while. However, she wasn't willing to give up such an opportunity so easily. She wasn't greedy to become a star, but she wanted to experience the feeling of earning money. It was a feeling of being on the ground. In the future, she would be a different Bai Xueli. She was not that great. She said that she wanted to realize her value for society, but she just wanted to prove that she was capable. Yi Mulin lowered his head and looked at his little wife's eyes. She was looking at him with such longing and caution. He reached out and held her hand, whispering, "You really want to go, don't you?" Chapter 3450. You won't be short of money. If you need money, you can tell me. He was still unmoved. It was late at night, and there were only two of them around. That was why he talked to her about it. Bai Xueli was a little disappointed by his words, but she didn't refute. She just looked up at him. Her eyes were full of hurt. Yi Mulin took her hand. Let's talk about it at home. She stubbornly didn't move. She was a little childish. She was acting like a naughty girl. He knew it after he had been with her for a long time. Yi Mulin stopped and murmured, "Let's talk about it at home. Otherwise, my answer is no." Riceworm suddenly felt very sad. Her pursed lips trembled. Yi Mulin, you are too autocratic. He found it funny and stared at the angry girl. Are you really angry? What do you think? She walked in front of him angrily. Yi Mulin followed behind her and smiled faintly. After getting in the car, she still didn't say anything. She was still holding the bag in her hand. He looked at her and started the car. They didn't say anything on the way. When they got home, Bai Xueli didn't get out of the car. She said softly, "I want to go." Yi Mulin unfastened the seatbelt and looked at her. "Let's talk about it at home." But she stubbornly refused to move. She said again, "I said I want to go." Yi Mulin, I'm not doing it for Gu Changfeng. I am doing it for myself. He looked at her serious face for a long time. He put his hands on the steering wheel and gently knocked on it. Then he said slowly, "How do you know that I won't agree?" Riceworm was stunned. She asked in disbelief, "You will agree?" He looked at her sideways. "Are you going to get out of the car?" "Your Highness." She immediately acted like a little wife and said without any backbone. Yi Mulin glanced at her and didn't say anything. He directly opened the door and got out of the car. Bai Xueli bit her lips and immediately followed him. In the elevator, he leaned against the wall and looked down at her. Riceworm couldn't stand his gaze. She immediately hugged his arm and whispered, "Yi Mulin, thank you." He was not moved. He looked very reserved. "I said I have conditions." She didn't make a sound and just hugged him like a spoiled puppy. He frowned. "How old are you? Why are you still acting like a child?" "I'm 8 or 9 years younger than you." She pressed her face against his shoulder. "What's wrong with acting coquettishly?" The corner of his mouth curled up slightly, but he didn't say anything else. When they arrived at the apartment, he put her money on the coffee table, unbuttoned his coat, took off his clothes, and threw them on the sofa. Then he sat down and looked at her. "Okay, tell me." Bai Xueli's hair stood on end. "Explain?" "Explain what?" He looked at her. "Tell me about you and Gu Changfeng." Riceworm immediately bristled. "I haven't asked you to tell me about you in AI way. I've kissed her, but not to the extent of a deep kiss." To her surprise, he said it directly. Bai Xueli looked at him blankly. He reached out to hold her hand and drag her to sit in his arms. He said in a low voice, "But we haven't had a kiss. What about you and Gu Changfeng?" In his arms, her hair stood on end, and she wanted to be held tightly by him. Chapter 3451. She sat on one of his legs and looked at him in a daze. She knew that he was jealous, but she hadn't thought that he would say it so directly. He pressed harder on her lips, and she let out a soft cry and bit his finger instinctively. Yulin's gaze darkened. He held her sharp chin and asked, "Are you angry?" "I'm not," she said anxiously, and then she looked down and didn't say anything. He noticed her expression, and his heart ached, but he told himself that he couldn't afford to be calculative. He had liked her a long time ago, but at that time, she liked Mumbai and a lot of boys, or maybe she didn't like him at all. She was just young and playful, and he didn't look for her earlier. In the blink of an eye, Yulin's heart went through 1,000 thoughts, and his expression became much gentler. Riceworm blinked. "You're not angry anymore, right?" He looked at her and smiled. "Yes, I'm not angry anymore." Riceworm whimpered and threw herself into his arms. Yulin said in a low voice, "But I'll go and talk about the contract, okay?" She looked up in his arms and stuck out her tongue. "I heard from Secretary Lee that you don't even take cases with a commission of millions, unless it's a criminal case. It's my wife's love case. Do you think I should take it?" He held her chin and said in a dangerous voice. Then he seemed to have thought of something. "As for your reward, buy me a gift." She snuggled in his arms comfortably and poked his heart with her little hand. "I knew that Lawyer Yi would take advantage of the situation." His eyes darkened again, and he carried her to the master bedroom. He said in a very serious tone, "I'll teach you what it means to take advantage of the situation." She exclaimed and said in a low voice, "It's already past noon." He had already put her on the soft bed. After kissing her, he raised his hand and looked at the watch on his wrist. "There's only half an hour until tomorrow. Why don't we take a bath and come again? This is tomorrow's share. There are 3 times tomorrow. Do you want to do it once, or do you want to do it 3 times tomorrow?" Baishuali looked at him, not knowing that there was such a calculation. He stammered, "I think I'll choose again." But how could she be compared to the big bad wolf's husband? After this time, he would come again. Panting softly, she leaned against his shoulder to say no. "We agreed on 1 time." Lawyer Yi directly threw his million-yuan watch in her arms and chuckled. "It's already past 12 o'clock by Shueli." In the middle of the night, her voice came from the apartment while gnashing her teeth. "Yulin, you are a profiteer." But no matter how he resisted, it was useless. He was still gnawed to the point where not even his bones were left. It was close to 3 o'clock before he went to sleep. He was crazy enough, but the consequence of such wild behavior was that both of them were exhausted. Before falling asleep, she lay in his arms and said weakly, "Lawyer Yi, you've been indulging yourself too much recently." He smiled. A man who had been married for less than a year, and his wife was young and beautiful. Which man would not indulge her? He patted her back and said hoarsely, "Again, no." She immediately hugged him and complained before falling asleep, "I'm so tired." He laughed silently. "You didn't even put in the effort. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.